Hi, I'm Mimi Feliciano from the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and the Feliciano School of Business. And I'm thrilled to be here a year later from talking about human trafficking. This is Human Trafficking Month. Last year, Faith Taylor and I, she's from the business school, came and did a quick interview at that time. And since then, we had our associate provost, Ken Sumner, and Faith and myself have worked with approximately 30 other professors and interested parties here at Montclair State University, of course with Dr. Cole's blessing. And we have done many things in the past year, starting with we have a website up now. So people who are interested in this subject could go on the website and see all the many activities we have this month. We have a film festival, we have other Facebook interviews, we have an exhibit, an exhibition that's going to be going around campus, and we're working toward opening a center here in Montclair at the university, all related to this subject. With that, we'll be partnering with, many other organizations that are doing lots of great things, and including GEMS and Polaris and Homeland Security. I'm proud to say I am a board member of Homeland Security Foundation, and our founder, Richard Kendall, was gracious enough to introduce me to a special guest we have here today to talk about human trafficking from Homeland Security perspective. So I have with me Supervisor Special Agent Tom Countermine from HSI New York City, and he's going to talk about the role of Homeland Security in battling this problem. So let's start with, thank you for coming, and let's start with what is the role of Homeland Security regarding human trafficking?
Well, thanks, Mimi, and thanks for having me here. A little about myself. For the past approximately 13 years, I've been a special agent and now a supervisory special agent that has both conducted and supervised human trafficking investigations for the Department of Homeland Security, specific to the New York City area of responsibility. The reason why Homeland Security Investigations gets involved in human trafficking investigations is because we have a federal mandate as part of the United States Criminal Code that focuses on conducting these types of investigations. Specific to my experience, has been involved in sex trafficking investigations in and around New York City, but oftentimes that will bring us to different countries, different parts of the United States, including all of its territories. So as a federal agency, we have a large jurisdiction that we have to be in charge of and investigate crimes involving, specific to sex trafficking in New York City.
So what exactly is, how do you go about it regarding the victims and extracting them? Like, could you give an example of how that all plays out? What happens?
Sure. So when we are conducting these investigations, we take a victim-centered approach. So when we do identify and locate these women that have been involved in being forced into commercial sex acts, performing commercial sex acts, or generalized prostitution, we have to remember that what we're dealing with is a crime against a person. It's not a tangible item that's being exchanged back and forth. It's a crime involving individuals. So what we have to be aware of is the fact that by supporting these victims, identifying the issues that we may encounter while talking to these victims, whether or not this is their first time interacting with law enforcement, we need to get their story in order to prosecute these types of cases. So by taking the victim-centered approach, by working with our non-government organization partners, we're able to stabilize the victims, get them the social services they need, and get them to the point where they can provide information that will assist us in conducting our investigations.
Do you see this problem growing?
Well, I think one of the common misconceptions is that this problem is confined to a specific area or region of the United States, or that it affects other countries and not necessarily the United States of America. This problem, specific to human trafficking and sex trafficking specifically, crosses all socioeconomic boundaries, involves anyone from the really rich to the really poor, different cultures. Every part of the United States has at least some sort of role and has been encountered by us as in being involved or having sex trafficking issues.
Is there a particular part of the country more so than others?
It's not, because a lot of the times the victims will travel out of the states that they're initially living in. So here in New York City, you see a lot of crossing across state lines of the victims to go to different areas of the United States to still be involved in the commercial sex acts. So what you'll see is they're directed by their traffickers to travel out of state to other known traffickers in other either large cities, small cities, rural areas, where then they're forced to be involved in commercial sex acts.
What can we do? What can people do at home? Like, what can we do to help this problem?
Well, I think one of the things that the Department of Homeland Security has tried to do with their Blue campaign is raise awareness of some trafficking type indicators. And honestly, the thing that's helped us the most as we conduct our investigations is information that we've received either through the Immigration and Customs Enforcement tip line. The Polaris Project also runs a tip line. So it's a common resource that's listed on our website, ice.gov, also on the DHS website, the Blue Campaign website. So if you see anything that might indicate that there's some sort of human trafficking involvement where maybe males and females are traveling, they don't necessarily seem like they know each other. The female might not have access to any sort of identity documents. She might not have her own money. She might not speak without first appearing to gain the permission of the individual she's traveling with. She might not have any ties to the area. So we see these types of victims that are traveling consistently throughout the United States that don't necessarily know where they are, know why they're there, and in reality they're there at the behest of another person, the trafficker.
So are there any other indicators that people should be watching out for? And you're encouraging them to go to the website and to give tips to what they're seeing. What do you recommend that they do that exactly?
Well, if you see someone that you believe is in immediate physical harm or immediate physical danger, obviously call 911 or your local authorities. But if it's something that you believe might be not necessarily, it just seems strange or suspicious, always feel free to contact us through our tip line, the ice.gov tip line, the Polaris Project tip line. But the indicators, like I said before, it just seems like when it comes to the females that are consistently traveling, they don't necessarily know where they are. They don't really know why they're there. They're directed to be there by someone else, so they might not be familiar with the area. And they might seem out of place, not have access to money or their identity documents. Honestly, anything that might seem a little off to you, anyone that works in say at a bank or in a supermarket, specifically when it comes to the banks, if it seems like there's different types of deposits than normal that might be included in bank accounts that aren't necessarily associated with the individual, of different numbers that don't seem to match up with what that individual claims to be doing as an occupation, those are also good red flags that the banking industry is starting to recognize and report to us.
And it's just the whole idea that these people are victims and they don't even feel comfortable and know their rights, or that in a foreign country. That's probably. What's your biggest challenge?
So when conducting these investigations, sometimes the biggest hurdle that we initially have to get over when we encounter victims is that although we are a law enforcement agency, we take this victim-centered approach and we want to make sure that the victim understands that we're here to help them. We're not here to criminalize any of their behavior. We're here, and we do understand that in most cases these women are forced to be involved in the situation against their will, whether or not they were lied to when they first encountered their trafficker and told they were going to be doing other things, and then they end up in these conducting commercial sex acts. Ultimately what it comes down to is trying to explain, and through our constant communication, our constant feedback with non-government organizations, we've discovered that by the earliest possible point that we can get them those social services to get them to the point where they can fully cooperate with our investigation, and by explaining that we're not criminalizing their acts, it helps build the trust that we need in order to conduct these investigations.
Yeah, I know. It's an amazing amount of, it's an amazing challenge, and the organization is doing so much work toward trying to solve it. I wanted to ask also, so Is there any particular part of Homeland Security that's more involved in this than other parts?
So the way it's set up is each field office has a group of agents that are assigned to conduct these types of investigations. So in the New York City area, I'm the supervisor of one of those groups that focuses specifically in the trafficking of people. So we have a dedicated group of individuals and law enforcement analysts that help us conduct these investigations. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the identification and location of the victims, which takes many different roles and a lot of man hours to go out and take these individuals out of the environment they're currently in, the trafficking environment, and move forward and progress with our investigations to specifically target the traffickers and their organizations that support them. And it's also a financial industry because all the money that's made off of these commercial sex acts is then repatriated back and sometimes to foreign countries or to the traffickers themselves or their family members that control that money. So a lot of the times these victims won't have any money. They'll be living in squalid conditions, and they don't necessarily realize that they're being victimized. Sometimes because of cultural reasons, they don't necessarily want to explain what's going on with them. They might have some sort of fear towards interacting with law enforcement, and that's why we rely on our partners to give us that credibility based on the fact that we've worked with these organizations for almost a decade in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Has this been going on for, I mean, it sounds like it's just coming out in terms of some of these issues. Has this been going on for many years, or it's something that's growing? And what does the internet play with this?
Well, I think, this has always been a problem. I think recent social media and other media stories have focused on trafficking, but I mean, in the 13 years I've been there, it's been a steady flow of investigations and cases. It's been going on, 20, 30, 40 years. It seems generational, and it also seems that the traffickers are they're changing the way that they're operating because of the law enforcement focus on specific things like brothels or prostitution houses. Now individuals can be recruited even online. They may not have even met their traffickers initially, whereas in certain circumstances, the traffickers have developed true romantic relationships with these girls. So it's a difficult crime to investigate. It's been around as long as, 20, 30, 40 years. Our agency has been encountering individuals that have been involved with this up to 20, 30 years. So it does seem generational. It's always going to be a problem, and that's why we're trying to increase our awareness. And I thank you for the opportunity to come out here and get this message across.
Thank you so much.